Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that they're puppy dogs. They are absolutely wild animals, apex predators. Like, they are fully capable, and we do take a risk when going in the ocean, but you'd be surprised at how, intelligent they are and able to determine us against their food. They really don't look at us as a food source. There are, of course, attacks that happen, and those moments are so extremely rare when they generally will mistake us as their food. But for the most part, obviously, a job like I have wouldn't be able to exist if these guys were what the media portrays.
The odds of dying from heart disease in the US are 1 in 6. The odds of dying from cancer, 1 in 7. Dying in a car crash, 1 in 100. Drowning, 1 in 1,000. And the odds of getting struck by lightning are 1 in 15,000. Do you know what the odds of dying from a shark attack are? 1 in 3.7 million. Shark attacks, like other apex predators such as bears or lions, are sensationalized in the media to be more dangerous than they really are. Makes for a good story. But the risk is relatively minimal, especially when you consider the statistics I just mentioned. That all being said, you will never find me anywhere close to a shark by choice. But I found someone who does this for a living. Kayleigh Grant, a professional shark diver and founder of the Kaimana Ocean Safari in Kona, Hawaii. She has garnered a massive following on social media by spreading awareness about sharks and ocean conservation in general. We discuss the wildfires in Hawaii, the misconceptions regarding sharks, and the environmental impacts to shark ecosystems, and more. I'm John Schwenk, and this is the Adventures Less Traveled podcast. Enjoy. Kayleigh, you are in, what part of Hawaii are you?
I am based in Kona, Hawaii, South Kona.
Kona. Okay, so have the wildfires had an impact at all, or I'm not really sure geographically where that is in relation to.
Absolutely. I'm actually on a different island, but all of the islands are really feeling the effects of that. I think a lot of the world is watching and feeling the devastation around that.
So has that impact, because you are one of the either owners or founders of the Kaimana Ocean Safari. So I'm assuming it's had quite an impact on your business and your line of work. So maybe.
Yeah, it's always a tricky situation to think about tourism during this time, but it's also sort of a necessity in Hawaii. A lot of us depend on that. All of the other islands, I don't think, are very concerned about what's going on with us, knowing the devastation that's happening in Maui. And I'm really glad that you brought it up just to continue to raise awareness about it, because this is going to be many years of struggle for this community. And I know all of us based here in Hawaii want to do everything that we can to help. It's been a very slow summer. I think that even before the fires happened, it's kind of been a little bit of a slow summer, more people traveling to Europe, other areas. We really enjoy what we do, being able to take people out on the water here to experience the marine life. So we absolutely hope we can continue to do that and continue to, thrive as well, because all of us here on the other islands and even in other parts of Maui that were not affected by the fires are going to be the communities that are still going to be here after all the camera crews go away, to be able to help, our ohana, our loved ones in Maui. And I do have friends that were personally affected by the fires. Luckily, all the people that I know are still alive. They, didn't lose their lives, which is the ultimate loss. And we all feel for the people that have, of course, and their friends and family. But some friends of mine even have, lost their homes, their businesses, all of their belongings. So, hopefully the people still do want to come visit Hawaii, so that all of us can have the means to be able to support our ohana in Maui.
Yeah. And it's Hawaii. I'm pretty sure like most of the state's revenue comes from tourism. So I'm sure that's going to take a huge hit.
It's a tricky situation because even amongst locals, natives, people born and raised here, there is a big divide on this issue. Some people are saying don't visit Hawaii at all. Some people are saying, please still visit, because how can we fight for our land and fight for everything that we lost if we literally don't have an income. So I do think that the state, I think everyone agrees, it relies too much on tourism. So I hope that this, if one thing comes out of this, one of many, it's that we realize that we need to start moving away from tourism a little bit, be more self-sufficient within other industries and other job opportunities. But I don't think that that just happens like that. So still, there are people that rely a lot on, tourism industry, hotels, tours, so many different aspects. It would be a nice gradual change to shift and not be so reliant on that. But in the moment, that is kind of where we're at. And these people that lost everything, we don't want them to lose their jobs too and lose their livelihood and not be able to support their families. So, I always tell people, come to Hawaii, but please be as conscious as possible. Support small local businesses. If you can find, native Hawaiian businesses, people that were born and raised on the island, like please support them, be conscious, help the environment and different things the way that you can. But yeah, it's kind of a controversial subject, but that's, as long as you're a conscious traveler, and supporting the right places, I think everybody really appreciates that.
Yeah, for sure. And so a big part of the Kaimana Ocean Safari that you guys run is awareness about like plastics in the ocean, right? That's a major impact to sharks. So I don't think a lot of people really understand I mean, it's always one thing where you see it on TV, but it's another thing where you're actually, in it, and every day there's just waves and waves of plastic. So what's that like, and how does the Kaimana Ocean Safari help that?
Yeah, it's really great to bring people out. And as we're on the tour, we are always picking up any trash that we see, and we encourage people to help us point it out when they see trash or see something floating in the water so that we can pick it up. It's really nice to get people involved. We have like a net where we'll scoop it out, and we're like, here, you scoop it out, and I'm filming them and stuff just to get people involved in the issue and like see it firsthand, like you said. I think that people getting to experience that firsthand, it really can help them want to make changes in their own personal lives when they go home, go about their normal life. Like, oh, I saw all those plastic water bottles. Maybe I'm going to get the reusable, drink my filtered water at home in my reusable container. Like, oh, maybe I didn't need that single use bag or whatever we're finding. We're finding a lot of random things in the water, so it's always super helpful. And then on the broader scale, I'm able to show people this issue far and wide with my social media following. So it's really nice to get kind of the word out there and just make people a little bit more conscious about their choices. One thing I really love to focus on when I'm telling people about stuff that we find in the ocean and how it can be an issue is balloon releases. I think there's so many other ways to honor a gender reveal or a loved one that has passed away and these special moments in our lives without causing harm to the environment around us. And even if you are far away from the ocean, because it goes up in the sky doesn't mean that it goes away, right? And so that is often entangling, even electricity lines, wires, like they can get entangled and that can cause a fire. So there's a lot of things that can happen, not just wildlife, that could affect a lot of people. And of course, the animals, even land animals, it ends up in a pasture and something's ingesting that, getting entangled in that. And we do see a lot of balloons in the ocean.
It's funny you bring that up because I remember there was one video of a gender reveal where they like turned a waterfall like pink or something. And it was like, God, you just trashed the whole river just for your 5 seconds of fame there,
Yeah.
So you bring up an interesting point because I think one of the most daunting parts about the pollution problem is that it's so much, and there's like, even if we do our part in the US, there could be other countries around the world that are way worse than us. There's some that are way better, but you try to play your part, and then you see that, it starts to feel like that you're not really making any kind of impact on the world. So I think the biggest way to like change that is through people like you that do have like this big following where you can kind of get the message out and you can show people firsthand, like, this is what you're doing. If you don't, like, the sum of the parts will make a difference if we all just kind of pitch in and make a difference. So you grew up in Philly. So taking a little bit of a step back here. So how did you end up in Hawaii?
Yeah, I grew up on the East Coast, so there the ocean is a little bit colder, a little less friendly, a little bit murkier. But I grew up watching, The Little Mermaid on repeat and Free Willy, and just had a passion of the ocean that my dad would mostly foster by bringing me up to Massachusetts, and we would go on whale watches and things like that. And even SeaWorld before we knew it was terrible. I feel like it was a different time back then, being in my 30s, but now I would never go, of course. But all of those things that really fostered that, I loved. I love the ocean, but it wasn't exactly a reality where I was at to spend a lot of time diving. I know people do it, but it's very cold, very murky. So once I moved out to Hawaii, it was sort of undeniable that I can throw myself into this now. And, I'm on a rock completely surrounded by the ocean, and it's very beautiful out here. So I started with my dive master and got to see my first shark in the water out here in Hawaii. I moved out here about 11 years ago. And I don't think I expected to fall as in love with sharks as I did. But as soon as I got to see one, just against that really blue, royal blue, deep Pacific Ocean color out here, and the gray shark, just kind of the graceful movement, and the fact that it's not the monster that we see in the media that sees a human and wants to attack straight away and all of that. It really, even changed my perception. Not that I was extremely scared of sharks. Like, I was the first one in the water, stoked to go do it. But I was like, wow, they're really, really beautiful. Like, I don't know if I expected to fall in love with them so much. And just from there, my passion was completely ignited. I was like, I want to do this all the time. So on the North Shore of Oahu, they have a lot of shark diving companies out there. So I was able to work for a shark diving company out there for several years, a bit over maybe 6-7 years, and then was able to come over here to Big Island and start my own company. And we have been running Kaimana Ocean Safari for the last 3 years since 2020.
Wow, that's awesome. So I guess, what was the experience the first time you're in the water? Like, were you, I mean, obviously you have to have a love for sharks to be a shark diver, but was it like, what was that feeling like the first time that you're on your own and you're face to face with whatever kind of shark, tiger shark, great white, whatever it was?
Well, even before my shark diving journey, I was definitely an adrenaline junkie. I was skydiving. I even jumped out of a plane by myself before. I would like to jump off cliffs, solo traveling. So that was something I absolutely sought after. And of course, you hear shark diving and you're like, yeah, let's go. And so your heart's racing a little bit your very first time when you know that you're going in the water with like pretty substantial size sharks, 6-foot sharks. I'm like, oh, they're taller than me, they're bigger than me. So, but I got in, and the adrenaline actually started to fade, and a sense of calm actually took over, which you probably wouldn't expect. And maybe that wouldn't be the case for everyone. Maybe their heart would be racing. But I always tell people that when you actually get to see them on your own, that is when the magic happens, because your perception is totally changed. I think it's really hard for them not to change your perception. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that they're puppy dogs. They are absolutely wild animals, apex predators. Like, they are fully capable, and we do take a risk when going in the ocean, but you'd be surprised at how intelligent they are and able to determine us against their food. They really don't look at us as a food source. There are, of course, attacks that happen, and those moments are so, so extremely rare when they generally will mistake us as their food. But for the most part, obviously, a job like I have wouldn't be able to exist if these guys were what the media portrays.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that you bring that up, because I feel like there's such a misconception about any kind of big species, right? Bears or ox or anything, right? And I remember, I did a bike trip a couple years ago, and I was on my own, went into Canada, and everyone's like, oh my God, all the grizzly bears are going to eat you alive. And it's the same thing. It's like, they just want to eat their berries. They just don't mess with their cubs, and, just leave them, give them a sense of respect, So I feel like it's the same thing in the water with sharks. Like, as long as you're not being an idiot about it, then you can have a really, really immersive, awesome experience inside.
Yeah, I compare when I'm on the boat telling people how to interact with the sharks. I compare it a lot to bears too, because if you did see a grizzly, what you're not going to do is turn your back, start running away as fast as you can, right? They're just wild animals. They're predators. That's going to trigger their prey drive. Okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. That's a prey. I got to go chase them. So it's the same thing with sharks. I always tell people, just stay nice and calm, you know. Obviously, always go with the trained guide because I will happily throw myself between the people I'm taking out and the shark. But make my job easier. Stay nice and calm, you know, give it eye contact. Almost the same thing you would do with the bear, right? You say, hey bear, you look big, you let them know that you're there. Yeah, maybe back away, but slowly while you're looking at them, not turning your back and running. So it's the same thing with the sharks. You don't want to splash, flail around. That's looking like prey. Just like a bear running away looks like prey. Don't turn your back, splash, swim away really fast. They're just gonna be like, oh, what's this? There's something I gotta go over here and investigate. And this thing looks like it could be hurt or injured. So staying calm, super important. Go with the trained guide, you know, give them lots of eye contact. Eye contact is surprisingly effective. I feel like with a lot of predators around the world, probably even bears, you just want to appear like you're an equal apex predator, right? So making that eye contact is super important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's you have a lot of like really interesting like tips or like not tips, but like fun facts about sharks, and like the one was the eye contact, and like yeah, it just made me realize like there's a lot more than what people think of. So like I guess what is kind of the number one misconception people have about sharks then? Like
Yeah.
I know there's a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There are a lot of misconceptions surrounding sharks. I would say probably the main one is just how they are by nature, you know. They are a predator, of course, so they have that role in the ecosystem and they do hunt. That is how they survive and sustain themselves. That doesn't mean that they are looking at humans as a food source and that as soon as we get in the water, you know, they're like, there's food. That's just not how that works. I think another really important misconception is that if you remove sharks from the ecosystem, this comes as a misconception with a lot of predators, even land predators. You know, we see these ecosystems collapse. A lot of people, if they don't really understand how the ecosystems collapse or function and can collapse, if you remove a predator, you would think, oh, everything below is going to thrive. There would be more fish for me to catch, you know, say I'm fishing and whatnot. But real people that understand and real fishermen and real, you know, scientists and just people that understand the ecosystem a little bit better, understand that sharks play a really important role in even keeping the lower trophic levels in check and functioning properly. So it's really important to have sharks in the ecosystem. And actually, if you see a lot of sharks, it's a sign that the ecosystem is very healthy and everything is functioning in balance.
So is there a difference in the parts of the world? Like, I guess start from where are sharks? Are they mostly in the Pacific Ocean? Or are they everywhere, anywhere that there's water? Or
it's so funny because sometimes people will come on my tour and they're like, oh, well, there's no sharks here, right? And I'm like, if the water's salty, there's sharks. Sharks are all over the world. Even in parts of freshwater, bull sharks can go into freshwater from saltwater. So sharks are pretty much everywhere. And that's always the fascinating thing to me as well, is, you know, we hear about shark attacks because they're newsworthy. The fear is going to sell a lot of headlines. So we only hear about the attacks, but it's actually amazing with how many sharks are passing by humans every day in the water, how low and how rare shark attacks actually are, for the fact that sharks are with us in the water anytime we're in the water, pretty much anywhere that it's salty. So if you think about how many people are entering the water every single day, I mean, we're talking millions around the world, many millions. And we only have on average like 5 to 10 fatalities. Of course, there's a few more bites, but about 5 to 10 fatalities from sharks per year. So it's actually really impressive at how well they are able to distinguish that we are not their food. And then within those fatalities, a lot of them end up being provoked attacks. That doesn't mean that the person is necessarily doing anything, going up and poking them or something to provoke them in that manner, but there could be some other factors going on that are human influenced in the area that is causing the shark to come in and potentially behave in a way that it wouldn't normally behave. Even like I just posted a video this morning of some fishing going on from shore, and there was actually some swimmers kind of around the area. So, we are influencing their environment every single day. And there are so many factors that we may have even caused that cause the shark to come in and behave in a way that it normally wouldn't had the humans not been there. But we don't like to take that stuff into account sometimes, but luckily the attacks do end up getting analyzed in the area, and a lot of them end up being provoked attacks that we had a huge influence on.
Yeah, if people are not very good at thinking in terms of probabilities. I mean, I always think of it as like your baseline risk is, I would say 90 whatever percent of the population drives a car, and that's way more risky than any of these like things that people freak out about. And five to 10 deaths a year out of millions and millions of people that go in the ocean, like that's pretty safe if you ask me.
It's astronomically impressive, honestly, with how many people are going in the water. And like you said, there are so many other, every time I even just drive to work, I'm taking a greater risk than when I'm out there on the sea and potentially swimming with a shark. And you're actually even more likely to be bitten by a New Yorker than a shark. So I think we can all agree that our own species is a lot more scary than the sharks.
And also it could be that like you said, the Atlantic Ocean is a lot more murky. So like maybe you just don't even notice it because the water's not as clear,
Yeah. The visibility is definitely a huge factor as well. So if, obviously that doesn't mean don't go in murky water at all, but the shark is going to be able to see you in the clear water and determine what you are a lot faster, a lot better. And some things that can influence, even in Hawaii where our water is pretty clear, even that water can get a little bit too murky, and that's from a lot of rain, runoff. So even just knowing the weather and knowing what's going on around you can keep you a lot safer. So I always recommend also not going in the water, after a huge, heavy rainfall. That also is something that I know happens here in Hawaii and probably other places around the world. When there is a lot of rain, it can, and flooding, things like that, it can even pull out animals that have passed away in the flood, been kind of drug out of these river mouths and harbor mouths and stuff. And then they're smelling animals decay and, so you never know what's going on even just below the surface. So I would always avoid going surfing, swimming in really murky water, and try to go in groups if you can too. That definitely helps. Like sharks are pretty shy. People don't get to see that side of them. They are pretty shy. So strength in numbers, if you're out there with a few people, it's definitely better than just being alone, the sitting duck. So highly recommend.
Now, I guess this is just, I'm thinking through everything you're telling me. So why is it that, because if you splash, sharks are more likely to think that that's like food. So why is it that like at the ocean, when everyone's like, when there's waves and there's people jumping in and out, like, are they just too shallow that they don't want to take the risk? Like, cause I mean, people don't really, like we were just saying, like people don't really get eaten on the beach. Like it's when you go out far into the ocean, I guess. But.
Yeah. It can really happen anywhere. Like I said, like we're in their environment, in their home. And like I even know where a lot of the attacks can happen pretty close to shore. The shallower you stay, the less chance a shark is going to go in like super shallow, up to your knees, waist.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it is happening on the coastline when people are surfing. And again, I can't speak on any specific incident, but there could be like fishing in the area. There could be a harbor mouth. The water could be really murky. There could be things that were drug out from a big rainstorm. And the shark could be smelling or seeing something in its environment, or it's just its normal hunting grounds or pupping grounds where it's gonna birth and things like that. And then they just see a surfer sitting there in the lineup waiting for the next wave. And especially if they're smelling something like any of that fishing from shore, fishing nearby, spearfishing nearby, boats, any kind of human influence. And then they look up and it's like, oh, that outline looks exactly like the turtle or the seal that I normally hunt, and
Yeah.
I'm smelling something that smells kind of dead, so that must be it. So we're gonna go, So it does happen a lot of time closer to shore and when we can't really see what's going on below us. But ways to prevent that, like I said, trying to avoid after heavy rainfall, going in groups, and if you can not splash around a ton while you're on your surfboard, because it usually does happen to surfers. They can't be under the water to make eye contact with the shark, see that there's a shark there, so potentially leave, all of that. But when you're on the board, just, if you want, you can pick up your feet. That always helps. Kind of swim around a little bit too while you're out there. If you're just sitting completely still, you might look like a dead animal because you're not moving at all. So kind of look alive, go in groups, and that helps. But like ultimately, they are wild animals, apex predators. I even know, as somebody that swims with them on like a daily basis, that I am taking a risk when entering their home. This is where they live, and I can't control them. It's not like a circus trainer or anything like that. So they're wild animals. I tell people, when they come out on me with the tour, there's a waiver, like we are going into their home, and they're not the monsters, but at the same time, they're fully capable predators. So that's part of what I love about them and why they're so important for the ecosystem. But of course, there is a risk, so we must take that into consideration.
Sure. Yeah. Now, have you personally had like a rogue shark that just didn't go according to plan, or?
I've definitely seen some stuff over the years. I'm very lucky to have not been bitten. Not to say that that couldn't happen to me. I am even more so at risk than anyone else because I'm putting myself in their home more often than anyone else. But hopefully with all the thousands of shark dives that I have, it really shows that they're, not rogue all the time. But of course I've seen sharks behave in a way that's like, oh wow, okay, that was really intense. I'm gonna get out now and just take a little breather and then we'll try to get back in. But at this point, I've been doing it for so long that those moments don't really freak me out. They are like kind of exciting to me, but I have to stay humble. That's the thing with shark diving. Like, try not to ever get cocky. I just love to see like their behavior change. Like, whoa, that was really cool. That was really intense. Like, I love them for that they're these crazy predators and stuff, but just stay humble and know that like they are wild animals. They're apex predators and you can't control this. So if there is a moment that does get a little wild, a little extreme, something more intense than you're used to or that they normally do, just get out of the water, take a little break, or pick it up again tomorrow. I've had to pull all my guests out, like, get out, get out, get out, and it's like kind of hectic. And they're like, I'm like, get out as quick, but as calm as you can, and they're just like getting out. And I'm like, yeah, this shark is like, maybe more desperate. Fishing activity with humans has just continued to go up. It's not slowing down anytime soon. So we have to think of it from their perspective too. Like they're not maybe in an abundant ocean that they used to be generations ago. So they're more and more desperate to find food. So yeah, just if they're acting like that, I'm like, okay, time to get out, stay humble.
Now, you guys tag the sharks, I think, right? So when they are they typically in like the same areas that you dive? Like, would they recognize a friendly face, be like, oh, that's Kay, she's just going for a daily dive, or
Right.
like,
I've been able to help on a tagging project only once, but I am able to help with our local organizations. It's linked on my website too, if you want to check it out, KaimanaOceanSafari.com. Shows that we're not the research organization, but we are able to support the research organizations that are local to our community. One of those for sharks is called Shark Tagger. Another one is called Hawaii Uncharted. They're specifically for whale sharks. And the way that we're mainly able to help them is by taking photos of their dorsal fins, mostly on the left side of the dorsal fin, and their whole body, of course, but the dorsal is how they're really going to tell that unique individual. So they can really look at the spot patterns or the different scars, markings, and things along their body, and especially on their dorsal. And then you can still learn a lot about them as well, where you're able to see their movements, migrations, how often they're coming into certain areas. Like, oh, they're back. Okay, maybe they went this way and they did this, and it's interesting that they're coming around this time of year at the same time. So we can really learn a lot about them, which is really, really neat. And then the sharks that I've spent the most time with are definitely on the North Shore of Oahu, because I worked out there for so long, like I said, 7+ years. So I've seen those sharks a lot. The sharks here in Kona that I see are very like nomadic, long traveling. Like I won't see them for months at a time until they're coming back in the area. Just the nature of that really open ocean species with the oceanic whitetip and even whale sharks. Sometimes I never will see the same whale shark again. But those sharks, the Galapagos, sandbar, especially my faves, tiger sharks on the North Shore of Oahu, I have seen them a lot over the years. And it's hard to say if they recognize you. I think that they can really pick up on energy. So they can feel, you know, okay, this person is like very dominant. They kind of just work on like dominance. Like we know how to behave, we know how to interact with them. So they're looking at us as like, okay, this is like a very dominant individual. And I'd like to think that they recognize us, but I can't say that for sure.
And so just circling it back to the whole idea of like the natural ecosystem where the sharks, like with fishing, taking that all out and like how that affects the dynamic between the different fish. Are there, I'm assuming it is, but the dynamics of the different ecosystems in different parts of the world, like do sharks, like would a tiger shark in Hawaii, or I guess the behavior of those shark, like a tiger shark, would that be similar to the way that tiger sharks in somewhere else in the world, the way that they interact with the environment? Like, are they similar or are they different?
It's a really great question. And I think that there are always so many things that are hard to like definitively say, especially when we're talking about animals' behavior, because it's always like hard to get the answer of like why they might have been behaving in that particular way. I would say I have dove with tiger sharks in different parts of the world as well and noticed different behavior. Like the tiger sharks that I see on Oahu do see people more often versus sharks that have like never seen a person before. I feel like they're like way more skittish and kind of erratic in their movements. Whereas some of the ones that I've seen more often and they show up on those diving tours, they're like kind of come in, they're not as shy because they've seen humans before, but they're kind of like chill, like, I don't know, slow coming in. They're not as erratic. Obviously they can be if they want to be, but when I've dove with sharks I've never seen people before, it was kind of like they didn't know what to make of me. They're like, what are you going to do? And they're kind of shy, tiger sharks in general as a species. So then seeing one that's never seen a human, they don't know if they're going to put themselves in jeopardy. You know, all these animals, they have a biological need to survive, to reproduce, and they don't want to put themselves necessarily in harm's way. So I've just noticed that they'll be a little bit more skittish, but overall more shy. But tiger sharks in general are very shy species, and I think that that's something that translates across the board no matter where you're at. But yeah, I do think their behavior in different places can be different, but there's so many factors about that. It definitely could be the location, maybe how often, you know, they interact with fishing boats or humans or whatnot. Even just that individual, like I saw one great white in Hawaii, actually this picture that's behind me, and she was 22 feet, pregnant, female, super like chunky, feeding on a dead whale, super chill, like just cruising because she's so full and she's pregnant. She's like, I'm not gonna mess with these humans. And then I did some great white shark cage diving in New Zealand, and those sharks are like definitely more hungry, not eating like that big dead whale. They're like in murkier water. They're like more like slender. They're breaching out of the water. They're way more active and athletic. And so, yeah, even just, there's so many factors, you know, that play a part.
Sure. Yeah. Do you have a particular kind of shark that you enjoy interacting with the most, or?
Yes, I have so many. I think tiger sharks are definitely my favorite because I am also probably biased because, like I said, I've spent so much time with these specific individual sharks off the North Shore of Oahu that we have names for them. Like we see them every year. Like right now, a tiger shark that I've seen every year for like the last like 10 years or something has not come back this year for her season. So we're all just like, oh my God, is she dead? Like it just feels like your friend is missing in a way. And I know that probably sounds like corny or something, but we get really attached to these animals because we get to know them and they're amazing and they're beautiful. And we are so grateful when we get to see them. And then to not have one coming back is like, you're so worried. And sometimes that's normal. Like a year they'll go somewhere else, or kind of like, it depends on their mating and pupping and all of that. But yeah, it's really sad. And tiger sharks are for sure my favorite, just their demeanor. But I also love great whites, and I hope to see them more in the coming years. I love mako sharks, blue sharks, and there's so many other shark species that I still haven't gotten to see yet, but I am manifesting. I would love to see a basking shark. They're super interesting and massive as well, and poor beagles, and there's just so many. There's so many species of sharks, so it's never ending.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess there's not that many great whites in Hawaii, right?
Exactly, yeah. Great whites actually do come here. They mainly are following our humpback whales. If a humpback whale dies or gives birth, and it's just a potential other opportunity for them to get a lot of nutrients if there's a dead whale. So their great whites will kind of come out to Hawaii, and they do track them. There's some scientists that are tagging them and tracking them all the way out here. And they're mainly the great whites that are from the California coast that are making their way out here. And a lot of them actually stop just right in between California and Hawaii in an area they kind of nicknamed the Great White Cafe, potentially for some sort of food source out there. But yeah, a lot of them will follow the whales all the way to Hawaii. And that's how I was able to see this one. But that is extremely rare. I've only heard of like 3 sightings, this one included, from divers in Hawaii that have, well, I guess there was, when this great white came, so there was a dead whale, and it came into like realm of where it was like 12 miles offshore, so like where we could go and find it. And there was 3 great whites that popped up on that dead whale. So 3 had taken turns feeding. So there were divers that got to see 3 different individual, or 3 sharks were seen by various divers when that happened. And then there was a great white back on Oahu, North Shore, with the cage diving like many years ago, before my time, maybe like 20 years ago, 15 to 20 years ago. And then there was another one that popped up maybe 2 years now, just on the Kona coast, shallow in the reefs. So yeah, you never really know. There's not a huge population of them, so that's why it's every 5 years or more that maybe somebody will see one, with like a little bit increased activity of humans going into the water, even if it's fishing or swimming or whatever. There's more people out there, so us seeing stuff is more likely than maybe it used to be. But yeah, it's pretty rare to get to see something like that. A lot of times they're staying pretty deep too, especially during the day. Like when we were able to see this great white, she was up in the morning feeding. The sun wasn't up quite as high in the sky, and she was able to be up there. And then she went down for the majority of the day, probably like 5 or 6, 6 or so hours of the day, down into the cold water to regulate her body temperature. And then she actually came back up around sunset, and it was time to go at that point. But yeah, so they're mainly staying deep. I would say a lot of fishermen are going to end up or more likely to see them than the divers. Just being out at night, a lot of people will fish. So really interesting though.
So I guess more just like in general, like what drew you to sharks specifically, as opposed to like whales or dolphins or other protected, endangered sea life, I guess?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I love it all. And when I was young, my obsession was actually orca. And so it just changed once I was able to see sharks, because they're so beautiful, and I just kind of, like I said, in that moment became obsessed with them. But I think also realizing, and this was something I learned through getting to know sharks, is just not only how misunderstood they are, but how much they're being killed. I mean, sharks are killed at about like 100 million every single year. So when you realize that they're something we should be protecting, they're really important, they're not, a huge threat to us, and then we're killing them at such an alarming rate, it's like, okay, well, although I love every animal in the water, I feel like these guys really need it more than a lot of other species. So I really enjoy speaking up for them.
And when you first like kind of made that decision to pursue that, did you have a lot of pushback from your friends and family, or were they generally pretty supportive, knowing that there, even despite all the danger that there was?
I'm very lucky because I think my friends and family already knew that I was kind of like a wild card and very adventurous, and I like to live on the edge. My dad still to this day, when I get off the phone with him, he's like, "Be careful," just the fatherly worry. But they're all really supportive, and they're just happy for me that I'm doing what I love to do when I get up out of bed every day, which is really nice. I would say like the biggest pushback is people of the internet are just like,
Yeah.
will always find something to be mad about and angry about. And sometimes I think it can be triggering for a lot of the male humans, that they're seeing, this like blonde girl interacting with these like huge sharks and this and that. And that can be like a little bit triggering. And most people are very, very supportive, but there's just those odd few that are like, get triggered by it and don't like it and just want to say something negative. And I'm like, and of course, some fishermen get really angry as well, that we're just trying to speak up for the sharks, because fishing can be a huge detriment to sharks. We understand that a fisherman can't control what's on the end of their line. So I try as best as I can to be as sensitive to that and find a way that we can like work together, because I know a lot of fishermen, there's good fishermen and bad fishermen, just like there's good divers and bad divers. So there's good and bad people in the world. And I know like a lot of the really good fishermen want the ocean and the ecosystem to be healthy, so then their family can fish for generations. And it's just really important that we all work together. But of course, you just get like a couple cranky ones that are like mad that you're speaking up against something that they may have an impact on. So
Yeah. I mean, the people on social media, it's like you could you could have the most wholesome, like generous video of something and someone still finds a way to complain about it.
that 100%. Yeah. There's people that are, you can't go on any type of comment section and not see something negative. So I've gotten really good about not letting it bother me.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess keeping refrain from the comment section as much as possible maybe. But
I don't
the
even read
In
them
terms
half
of
the
the
time.
yeah. But the fishermen are interesting because, there is a case like, oh, that's their livelihood and everything. I do see it's kind of both sides of the coin. We're like, all right, they do need to feed their families. So
Yeah.
if people could just work, like you said, just work together, like just you educate them about the danger that it causes, and then they educate you on like how the economics of it works and how like maybe there's some kind of other alternative solution there, then like that's I think where the progress can be made.
Yeah, and there is good types of fishing that is way more sustainable, and types that are just really harmful and detrimental. Like my husband is a spear fisherman. I love that form of fishing because he can be so selective. Like he is literally under the water looking at everything, and he decides what he shoots. When you're throwing out a line, like you can't control what's going to be on the end of that. And like I know that they don't have control over that. And honestly, if a guy is going out on his boat fishing, throwing a couple lines in, sees something that he doesn't want to catch, like a shark or a different species that he just wasn't after, cut the line, let it, swim away. That's even way more sustainable. It's when we start to get into the larger commercial operations where I start to get like, oh, we can't be so selective about it. So a lot of things die as bycatch, just means something that they didn't intend to catch. They don't need it. They don't want it. It often dies. Throw it back in, and that was just a wasted animal to bring us, that one sushi platter. It's like for
Right.
every like, I think don't quote me on this, but I think there's something in the commercial fishing industries as a whole, it's like 40% bycatch. It's something astronomical where you're just like, that doesn't
God.
make sense to me, where we can just kill all of these other animals that are going completely to waste for this one target, and a lot of it is like what we do eat. Tuna is a huge one. So yeah, when it starts to get into the larger operations, trawling's obviously terrible, long lining, I start to get a lot more, uncomfortable with that, and like, it just doesn't make sense to me how we can waste so much.
And not to mention, like, even from a societal standpoint, like how many people are starving or could use the
Yes.
food, like I get it if like, okay, you caught too much and like, we don't have any means to economically dispose of it, but there's people who are hungry who could very much use that food.
Like, how could we get it to those people or something? Yeah, like that would be
Right.
awesome. That would make me feel a lot less bad. I wish there was better systems in place to make this make more sense.
Yeah. Well, that's why we need people at the word. So that's pretty much all I had, but I had a couple like kind of fun questions, little things to ask. So Hawaii is actually not pronounced Hawaii, right? It's Hawaii.
Well, technically, Hawaii, it's kind of like a
Oh,
lot of W's become a V in Hawaiian
okay.
language, but I'm not Hawaiian, so I don't want to act like I know it all.
Right. Well, so then the Aloha and and the Mahalo. I see that written on like your emails, like instead of saying hi, you'll say aloha or mahalo. So what are the? Does it mean hi and thank you, or
Yeah,
like what do those mean?
I love the word aloha because it does have like a lot of other meanings, and people even use it in for the word love. And I just think it sounds so beautiful, and it's so weird. Like now I've lived here for a long time. I'm a forever visitor. I am, not born and raised in Hawaii and not native. So it's really important that we recognize, like even if I live here for the rest of my life, I'm still a visitor. And that's like really important to me to try to like have as much respect for the local and native Hawaiians as possible. But I've just lived here for a long time. So I'm very used to saying like, hey, aloha guys, it means a little bit more welcoming to me than just saying hi, hey. So I really like to use it. I feel like it's like connecting. I feel like we can learn so much from Hawaiians and Hawaiian culture just about like love, acceptance. And I just think it's really beautiful. So yeah, I really enjoy getting to learn more about that myself and using that terminology, just saying aloha. It just feels so welcoming and so open. So I like that.
Yeah. And wait, what's mahalo? Is that the same
Mahalo is
thing or is it?
thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Sweet. Now, last question before we part is this is the Adventures Less Traveled podcast. So I have to ask you, and I'm sure you have a very different answer than most people, but how do you personally define adventure?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I think I define adventure is putting anything out of the norm or putting myself out of my comfort zone a little bit is how I define adventure. Just doing something different, just putting yourself out there. Even, talking on this podcast is an adventure because just putting myself out there, like kind of standing on the edge, getting out of your comfort zone. That's how I define adventure.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, this was great. I know you're super busy, so I appreciate your time. And yeah, hopefully, so everyone should go follow mermaid.kayleigh on Instagram, TikTok, I think it's the same.
And
And
YouTube.
and then the Kaimana Ocean Safari. You guys should all check that out as well. So cool. Well, thanks again. And
Thank
thanks,
you.
everyone. Thanks for tuning in. All right. Take care.